Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. World leaders, including those from Russia and India, are in the Chinese port city of Tianjin for the summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, as China tries to counter U.S. influence. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, who's set to attend a military parade in Beijing this week, is also expected to board a train to China's capital city today. Severe drought in South Korea's coastal city of Gangneung has left its main reservoir capacity at its lowest ever level, making daily routines such as showering and laundry difficult for residents. A state of national disaster has been declared in the city, with fire department water tankers set to be deployed to the region today. South Korea, currently serving a 2-year term as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, will assume the rotating presidency of the Council for the month of September. We begin in China, where the country's diplomatic super week is underway, kicking off with the SCO summit in Tianjin over the weekend and rolling into Wednesday's Victory Day parade in Beijing. Beyond the optics, two pairings are in focus: China-India and China-North Korea, as Xi met Modi in Tianjin, and Kim Jong-un is expected to begin his train ride to Beijing today. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
Around 20 heads of state have gathered for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Tianjin, China, with Chinese President Xi Jinping casting the meeting as a rallying point for the Global South. Starting on Sunday and running until Monday, this year's SCO, which is known for its counterstance against the West, is the biggest so far, with Russian President Vladimir Putin and India's Narendra Modi in attendance.
At this summit, we are tasked with an important mission to build consensus among all parties, ignite momentum for cooperation, and draw up a blueprint for development.
Reports indicate a Tianjin declaration will follow, addressing trade and security following tariffs imposed by the United States. On the sidelines, Xi held back-to-back bilaterals, including with India's Narendra Modi, Turkey, and Vietnam, framing cooperation and mutual respect as the way forward. Among them, the Xi-Modi summit garnered a lot of attention. After years of frosty ties, the two leaders agreed the world's two biggest Asian economies should be partners, not rivals, a carefully worded signal that both sides want to steady ties. Particularly as India has been hit with a 50% tariff by the U.S. and China is still working with the U.S. on its rate.
Our cooperation is closely linked to the interests of our 2.8 billion people and also the global development. We are committed to advancing our bilateral relations based on mutual trust, respect, and consideration.
This event isn't where China's hosting role stops. Later this week, the 80th anniversary of Victory Day will be celebrated in Beijing's Tiananmen Square, with leaders from across the globe joining. For South Korea, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Woo-won-sik, is set to attend. One key highlight is North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's visit. He is expected to board a train to Beijing on Monday to attend the Victory Day military parade. Multiple signs point to Kim traveling by rail, which takes roughly 20 to 24 hours from Pyongyang. Hotels in the Chinese border city of Dandong have reportedly restricted foreign bookings, while some train services have been suspended. Kim has traveled to Beijing 4 times, twice by train and twice by private plane. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
So as we just heard, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is expected to board a train to Beijing, and all eyes are now on whether there will be a three-way summit between the leaders of China, Russia, and North Korea. For more on this, we're joined by Professor Mason Ritchie, Professor of International Politics at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Professor Ritchie, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So with North Korea's Kim Jong-un set to attend the military parade in Beijing this week on Wednesday, he's likely to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian leader Vladimir Putin there. Could this serve as an opportunity for the three countries, North Korea, China, and Russia, to strengthen their cooperation against the West?
Yeah, I think there's little doubt that all three leaders are happy to get to broadcast alignment against the West, especially I guess this is critical following how South Korea has continued to improve its relations with Japan, first under Yoon Suk-yeol and now under Lee Jae-myung, which fits into the larger trilateral cooperation with the United States, which in turn fits into a larger U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy of leveraging alliances in order to put pressure on these three countries, especially China. However, beyond that sort of broadcasting alignment, I think things get a little bit trickier below the surface, especially for North Korea and China. In the case of China, I don't really think that China actually wants this type of sustained and deep trilateral cooperation with Russia. North Korea wants to maintain a little bit more of a standoff distance, I think, especially than Russia might want. So China, I think, under Xi wants this to be more of a threat than a reality, so to speak. And as for North Korea, it may be pivoting in some sense back to China as the Ukraine war is starting to wind down, and North Korea is perhaps even also beginning to lay some of the diplomatic groundwork for improved relations with the U.S. and negotiations with the Trump administration.
Right, and Kim Jong-un, he rarely leaves his regime, and this is believed to be the first time for the North Korean leader to take part at a gathering, of foreign leaders. What might North Korea try to gain from this trip, and what message might it deliver at this event?
Yeah, this is a fairly historic trip that Kim Jong-un is taking, in the first place for himself, going to his first big multilateral gathering like this. It's also the first time that a North Korea leader has come to this Victory Day celebration since, I believe, 1959 when Kim Il-sung came. Kim Il-sung also went to the Bucharest Comic-Con in the early 1970s. But other than that, North Korea has very rarely, if ever, on a leader level, engaged in these types of multilateral meetings and multilateral engagements. So in that sense, I think it's a pretty big deal. What North Korea is looking to do, as I said, I think clearly Kim wants to improve relations with China, which have cooled somewhat during the Ukraine war when Pyongyang and Russia built up their axis of cooperation. And so as the war in Ukraine is starting to wind down, I think it makes sense, of course, for North Korea to want to pivot back to China in some way. And then in the second place, as I also mentioned earlier, I think that North Korea is beginning to think somewhat about how it might take advantage of the possibilities of the Trump administration in terms of meeting with the United States. And so laying the groundwork here, having discussions in advance, with Xi, I think serves to go in that direction in some sense.
Right, it really is a historic trip for North Korea indeed. And some analysts say the North Korean leader's debut on the multilateral stage could signal an opening for dialogue with the United States. What's your take on this? How likely is it, do you think, that the regime will return to talks with Washington and possibly even Seoul?
Sure. So over the last weeks, signals have gotten a little warmer out of Pyongyang in terms of the willingness on their side to meet with the Trump administration. But that's starting from an extremely low level of readiness to do so. So I don't think that we can read too much into this at this point. I think the real thing that they've made clear is that if North Korea meets with the United States, it wants to do so on the leader level, and it wants to do so under the condition that denuclearization is not on the table. Under normal circumstances, I would say that this is a non-starter, but I would simply point out that Trump, when he had the summit with Lee Jae-myung, at least publicly, did not bring up denuclearization of North Korea. Trump brought up denuclearization, strangely enough, in the context of China and Russia, but not specifically with respect to North Korea. Maybe that was just a slip of the tongue, and later Lee Jae-myung seemed to indicate that he was on the same page with Trump in terms of aiming at denuclearization of North Korea. but there's at least a little bit of daylight there in which one could see that, perhaps a world in which the United States would be willing to talk with Kim without that precondition. As for South Korea, I haven't seen any indication from North Korea that they're willing to open the door to talks with South Korea, which is consistent with the way that they have approached this country ever since 2019. So I would be surprised if that happens, unless there's something happening with the United States, and the United States expressly wanted South Korea to be a part of it.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Rich, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for having me.
South Korea is set to assume the rotating presidency of the United Nations Security Council in September. Seoul will oversee all official and informal meetings that represent the Council in engagements with other UN member states and agencies. During the month-long term, South Korea is expected to shape discussions on the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the war in Ukraine. The Council's 15-member countries take on the rotating presidency in alphabetical order, each serving for 1 month. South Korea is currently serving a 2-year term as a non-permanent member of the Security Council. The drought in South Korea's eastern coastal city of Gangneung has led to a full-blown national emergency. President Lee Jae-myung has declared a state of national disaster for the region. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Over in the eastern coastal city of Gangneung, a water scarcity crisis has escalated into a full-blown national emergency. Oldboy Reservoir, the city's main water source, has dropped below 15% capacity, the lowest ever recorded level. This comes despite the emergency pumping of 10,000 tons of water a day from a temporary downstream station. But officials say the decline has not slowed, with new record lows being set daily, while the so-called Maginot Line for drinking and household water has collapsed. Water meters are being shut off at 75% capacity just 11 days after restrictions were first imposed at 50%. Public officials and community leaders are carrying out the shutoffs, but residents are already feeling the strain, with daily routines like showering, laundry, and cooking becoming increasingly difficult and damage to crops mounting.
The most important part is sharing in your commitment to conserve water, even if it means shortening operations.
On Saturday, President Lee Jae-myung declared Gangneung a state of national disaster. The decision followed a drought response meeting in the city, where Lee ordered ministries to act immediately. The declaration gives the government legal authority to mobilize personnel, equipment, and emergency supplies to ease the crisis. The president also issued a firefighting mobilization order. 50 fire department water tankers will be deployed to the region, delivering an extra 2,000 tons of water every day. In preparation for the worst-case scenario, where even drinking water may run out, Gangneung has been stockpiling bottled water. More than 1 million bottles have already been collected, filling the parking lot of a large gymnasium. Distribution has begun for daycare centers and welfare facilities, and direct deliveries are planned for residents with mobility issues. But rain remains elusive in Gangneung. While showers are expected nationwide on Monday, Gangneung is forecast to receive only 5 to 10 millimeters. Meteorologists say no significant rainfall is likely before September 10th. So far this year, the city has recorded just over 404 millimeters of rain, only 42% of the annual average. Gangneung residents are now bracing for weeks, if not months, of disruption. With reservoirs at record lows, officials warn that the city is confronting not just a severe drought, but a test of survival. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
This year marks 30 years since Korea set up an office of its foreign aid agency in Uzbekistan for development assistance. Celebrating this milestone, a team of reporters explored how Korea is helping build resilience against the harsh impact of climate change. Our Oh Soo-young was there.
Formerly the world's 4th largest lake with a vibrant fishing industry, the once vast waters of the Aral Sea are now known as the Ship Cemetery. Over 60 years, due to Soviet cotton farming projects that consumed its rivers, the Aral Sea is just now a tenth of what it was. Trade and livelihoods have dried up with the ecosystem.
There used to be plenty of food here. There were many sturgeon.
and we could get caviar. After the Aral Sea dried up, many moved away.
The surrounding Republic of Karakalpakstan constitutes over a third of Uzbekistan's landmass, but less than 6% of the population lives here. Desertification has led to frequent salt, sand and dust storms, making it broadly inhospitable for people and vegetation. Heavily salinated, with sodium flying in from the Aral Sea, this is basically now a wasteland. Even weeds are unable to grow here. But recently, sprigs of hope are changing the barren landscape. Since 2021, the Korea International Cooperation Agency has funded the Global Green Growth Institute to help 4 districts of Karakalpakstan overcome the impact of climate disasters. Under the 4-year program, nearly 18,000 people have been trained in climate-smart farming methods, with 6 targeted models designed by the GGGI. One solution is planting windbreak trees to shield fields and crops from salt-laden winds. Drip irrigation and new host-row sprinkler systems provided through Korean funds save water and improve soil quality.
We've been farming the same way for the last 45 years. The Aral Sea's growing impact has been long known, but until now, there wasn't enough interest in finding a solution.
His field is now part of that solution, growing over 6,000 windbreak seedlings to help other farms prosper across the region. Korean support has also helped new farmers set up shop. Partnering with Nuku City's Mono Center, GGGI developed training for 40 unemployed residents, with 1.2 Uzbek som, or over $96,000, funding greenhouse crop production. One graduate in her 30s has scaled her home farm to a 1-hectare greenhouse business, producing tomatoes and cucumbers for export.
As much as my knowledge grew tenfold, my revenue's grown tenfold too. I was able to expand my business. Now I have 70 to 80 employees.
Separately, the GGGI provided training and equipment for 16 women with disabilities so they could set up small greenhouse spaces in the comfort of their homes. Looking ahead, KOICA and GGGI are ensuring sustainable finance for future projects nationwide, working with 2 major local banks to issue over $1 billion in green bonds listed on the London Stock Exchange.
We supported the creation of a green finance framework, where funds can only be used for designated purposes. This ensures that the capital will be invested long-term in Uzbekistan's green sectors, including climate-smart agriculture.
Helping increase climate resilience and the quality of life and jobs, South Korea is working on the ground to bring winds of change for a sustainable future. Oseong, Arirang News, Nukus.
A much-anticipated film by a star Korean director Park Chan-wook, No Other Choice, has achieved a 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. According to the film rating website, so far 17 critics have reviewed the film as of Monday, and it is as fresh as it gets. BBC's Nicholas Barber says No Other Choice isn't just Park's funniest film, but his most humane too, and that's quite something for a comedy as violent as this one. The film was unveiled at Venice Film Festival last week and received a lengthy standing ovation, heightening anticipation ahead of Saturday's announcement of the festival's top prize, the Golden Lion. Park's filmography boasts Oldboy, The Handmaiden, Decision to Leave, and Lady Vengeance.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. Starting in the Middle East, Israel has announced the targeted killing of the spokesperson for Hamas' armed wing. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced on Sunday that Abu Obaida was targeted in a joint operation carried out by the military and the Shin Bet Domestic Intelligence Service. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz congratulated the Israel Defense Forces and the intelligence agency for the flawless execution. Hamas has not confirmed his death. The IDF also conducted a strike in Yemen on August 28th, killing the Houthi Prime Minister Ahmed al-Rahawi along with several senior ministers. The Houthi leadership confirmed al-Rahawi's death over the weekend, vowing to escalate strikes against Israel. The Kremlin on Sunday accused Europe of obstructing U.S. President Donald Trump's peace efforts in Ukraine. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov described the unified European stance as a European part of the war, asserting that it hinders both U.S. and Russian efforts to achieve peace in Ukraine. He said that Russia is open to diplomacy, but only if Kyiv demonstrates a readiness to negotiate. Peskov added that without a reciprocal response from Ukraine, Moscow will persist with its special military operation. European leaders refute such claims, stating they do not believe Vladimir Putin is genuinely interested in peace in Ukraine. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and French President Emmanuel Macron continue to condemn Russia's aggression and reject any peace proposal that undermines Ukraine's sovereignty. Meanwhile, Russia's defense minister reported that Moscow's territorial gains are increasing, now averaging 600 to 700 square kilometers per month, up from earlier this year. In Vatican City, Pope Leo XIV called for an end to the pandemic of arms, both large and small, on Sunday, following a school shooting in Minneapolis that resulted in the tragic loss of 2 children during Mass. The Pope delivered his appeal in his native English, a departure from his usual preference for Italian, the language of the papacy. Speaking from St. Peter's Square, he prayed for the victims and those who were injured, asking God to help curb the global spread of weapons. He also called for an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine and urged all parties to choose negotiation over violence. In Taiwan, Taipei Zoo celebrated its female panda Yuanyuan's 21st birthday on Saturday, with hundreds of visitors watching as she enjoyed a special ice cake decorated with a Winnie the Pooh carrot figure. Born in 2004, Yuanyuan arrived in Taiwan in 2008 alongside male panda Tuan Tuan under China's Panda Diplomacy Initiative. At 21, she has far exceeded the average wild panda lifespan of 14 to 20 years. Her companion Tuan Tuan passed away in 2022 after 18 years, but their legacy lives on through their 2 female cubs, Yuan Zai, who is 12 years old, and Yuan Bao, who is 5 years old.
September is starting on a rainy note. It was a rough Monday morning commute for those of us in the capital area, with strong rain of 10 to 40 millimeters per hour pounding down. And the capital area in northern inland Gangneung could see up to 100 millimeters of downpours, even more, until this afternoon, while the rest of the country could see on and off rain lingering into tomorrow. However, the east of Gangneung province will only get around 5 millimeters during the day today, which will not be enough to ease the dryness they have been dealing with lately. A heavy rain advisory is in place for the capital area, and the heavy rain warning has been issued for the mountainous regions on Jeju Island. Meanwhile, heat wave alerts stay in place for most of the southern provinces. And this afternoon, Daegu and Gyeongju will be getting up to 33 degrees Celsius, Seoul, Chuncheon topping out at 29 degrees. Now, central regions will stay mostly sunny for the rest of the week, and we can look forward to much more comfortable temperatures next week for sure.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.